Hey everyone, Miss here. This is the final guide to beat Lewis Hamilton's time. Let's get this started. Your first braking point is before the pit wall on the right ends. You can go a bit more to the right after the pit wall ends to give yourself a bit more space. Straighten the car out before you start to fully accelerate. On this upcoming turn, you will quickly ease off the throttle and then get back on it. Look for a patch of dirt that is on the right, as that will serve as your braking point. Along the way, you will adjust your braking so you can make sure you actually make the turn. Carefully accelerate while staying on third gear. Use a bit of braking here. Carefully accelerate. And when the tarmac changes from the lighter to the darker gray, you will then brake quite a bit while staying on third gear. Carefully accelerate your way out. Right after you reach the top of the hill, there is a little dip, and once you reach it, you will ease off the throttle and wait until you reach the second apex before you start to fully accelerate. Start to turn in right before you pass these two back signs. You will then ease off the throttle for a moment, bring yourself to the left side of the track, and then start to brake before the curb on the left ends. This should give you just enough space to be able to make this turn without ending up on the gravel. Straighten the car out before you start to fully accelerate, especially if you are on second gear. Bring yourself to the right side of the track and use this patch of dirt on the right as your braking point. You'll be trail braking through these next couple of turns, then brake before you pass this crosswalk right here, and just be very gentle with your throttle input. Straighten the car out and start to fully accelerate. Use a small percentage of your braking power as you go through this turn, then bring yourself to the right side of the track, and your next braking point will be when you're on top of the writing that is on the tarmac. Brake here and be very gentle with your input as you go through these turns. If you're on second gear, be careful with your inputs once again. Then brake right before you pass this sign that is on the left. And once again, and I cannot repeat this enough, if you go onto second gear, be very careful with your throttle input. Ease out the throttle as you go through this chicane, and then you will start to trail brake before you reach the curb that is on the right. Be very patient with your throttle input, as it's easy to understeer into the wall. Brake nice and early for these series of turns, as if you brake too late, you can potentially make the car very unstable. Short shift onto third gear while easing off the throttle. For these next two turns, you will brake right before the curbs end. So for this one, you will brake before the curb on the right ends. Be very patient with the throttle so you don't understeer. Then for this turn, brake before the curb on the left ends. Be very patient with the throttle as you're going uphill and the road is a bit bumpy. For the next braking point, there is a blue dot on the tarmac that you will use, and you will be braking right before you pass it. I'll have it shown right here to show exactly which blue dot I'm talking about. So you'll brake right before you pass it. Take your time trail braking and straightening the car out, as you will start to fully accelerate once your car is parallel to the curbs. Let's go ahead and fast forward through this. And your next braking point is going to be before the gray curb on the right ends. You will be trail braking for a short moment until you hit the apex, and then quickly get back on the throttle. Quickly ease off the throttle to stay on track, then brake before the curb on the left starts. You're going to go a bit wide on this turn if you brake where I brake. You'll be then going onto second gear, and be very patient with your throttle input. Brake right before you pass the happy little tree that is on the left, and bring yourself into the carousel. Be very patient with the throttle once again, especially as you are on second gear. Straighten out the car and start to fully accelerate. Ease off the throttle for a short moment as you go through this left-hander, then trail brake when the curb on the right starts, and you won't be trail braking for too long. This is just to adjust the car a bit more. Trail brake a tiny bit here, then brake right after you pass the officials that are on the right. You'll be using your full braking power for a short moment. Be patient on the throttle. Ease off the throttle for this turn, then you'll use a bit of braking for this turn. Ease off the throttle, then brake right before the curb on the left ends. You'll use all your braking power for a moment, then trail brake, stay on the right. Look for the Yokohama sign on the right as you'll brake well before you pass it. Bring yourself all the way to the left as soon as you can. Then brake before the gray curb on the left ends. You'll be using a quick burst of braking through this turn. Be patient with the throttle once again. Brake before the curb on the left ends. Be even more patient with the throttle as this is a bit of a longer, more drawn out turn. And then you will need to brake early for this upcoming turn. You can take advantage of the curbs, and if you go down to second gear and then shift onto third, you want to be very careful as the car can oversteer like how you see here. Right before you make the jump, you will start to brake, and you'll be trail braking a bit onto the apex, and then be very gentle with the throttle input. You can also short shift onto fourth gear to get a bit more stability. Look for a path that is on the right as that will be your braking point, and since this turn is long and drawn out, you'll be trail braking quite a bit through here. Then before the gray curb on the right ends, you'll be doing a bit more of your trail braking. Try not to accelerate too much too early, be very patient. Then you'll need to brake early for this turn as there's like a mini carousel on this turn, and once again you want to be very patient on the throttle. Straighten out the car before you start to fully accelerate. Brake a bit early for this turn as you want to hit this apex, but there's a little dip where the apex is, so you want to approach it carefully to make sure it doesn't take you out. Ease off the throttle for a moment and then start to fully accelerate and take a breather. Let's fast forward through this, and alright, so we're near the very end. Your next braking point is going to be right before the curb on the right ends. This will give you just enough space to make it through this next turn. Be very gentle on the throttle. Then finally start to brake when the tarmac on the left starts. Be very patient with your turn in as you don't want to hit the wall. Be patient with the throttle. Start to fully accelerate and you are good to go. Alright, and that concludes the guides for the Lewis Hamilton Time Trial Challenge. And it was pretty fun, pretty interesting to try to get the diamond times on all 10 of the challenges, except for Willow Springs, because that one was painfully hard and took me an entire day to get the diamond time. I just also want to mention that I did mention I was going to make an overview video for the challenges, but I'm deciding to go against that just because it doesn't really go with the theme of this mini series. And I'm going to go ahead and sign off now, but before I do, I just want to say thank you for the amazing support throughout this past year. So on that note, this is Mr. MCA, the world's most okay player, and I'll see you in the next video.